Perfect. Welcome, esteemed guests, speakers, and participants to today's pivotal webinar, the Namibian nuclear story from the world's largest uranium mine to a national nuclear vision. We are very honored to explore how Namibia transitions from a raw material exporter to a self-sustained nuclear energy pioneer. So we begin by acknowledging Namibia's rich half-century history in uranium extraction and core by world-class operations like the Rosing and Husab mines in the Orongo region. For decades, our abundant yellow cake power lives across the globe. So today, the dialogue shifts towards sovereignty, energy independence, domestic value addition, and clean power generation, guided by emerging national policies and high-level strategic dialogues on local nuclear power integration. Namibia is charting a course that harness its natural resources for internal socioeconomic transformation. And as we look toward major international engagements, such as hosting scientific global and non-proliferation exercises in the Erongo region, we welcome diverse perspectives on how safety, partnership, and policy will shape Africa's nuclear future. So on behalf of Newcomers for Nuclear and my dear colleague, Lencina, we give you the most warm welcome to today's webinar. This is the agenda that we have for today, having two distinguished experts from the nuclear community, Dr. Nada Al-Sufjani, who will be the moderator, and Mr. Noble ТОEiaseb, who will be talking about the Namibian nuclear story. So without further ado, and on behalf of my dear colleague, let me introduce Dr. Nada Al-Sufjani. So Dr. Nada Al-Sufjani is a STEAM professional in radiological science and health physicist from Saudi Arabia. She graduated with a Major of Radiological Science and a master's degree in physics. Her expertise includes radiation protection, health physics, radiation dosimetry, and radiation biology, with research focused on the health effects of low-dose ionizing radiation and improving radiation risk assessment. She is passionate about advancing the peaceful uses of nuclear science and supporting the next generation of nuclear professionals through knowledge sharing and collaboration. Please, Nada, the floor is yours to moderate this session. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Florencia, for that kind introduction. Hello to everyone joining us from a different part of the world. It's a pleasure to welcome you to today's new nuclear for newcomers for nuclear webinar, the Namibian nuclear story from the world's largest uranium mine to a national nuclear fusion. Today's session will explore the Namibia strategic role in the global nuclear landscape, its uranium resources, and the opportunities to connect natural resources with the long-term capacity building, education, policy development, public engagement, and youth leadership. We are honored today to have Mr. Noble ТОEiaseb as our speaker. The session will include a presentation followed by a live Q&A. So we encourage all participants to share their question in the chat. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Mr. Noble ТОEiaseb, a Namibian mining engineer, nuclear governance advocate, researcher, and science communicator, dedicated to advocating nuclear knowledge, clean energy, and sustainable development in Africa. He is the founder and the executive director of the Association Young Generation in Nuclear of Namibia. And Nuclear is the Clean Energy Club Namibia, leading national efforts to promote nuclear literacy, youth engagement, and science diplomacy. On the academic side, Mr. Noble holds a specialist engineering diploma in mining from the National University of Science and Technology, MISIS, in Moscow, Russia, as well as a Master of Business Administration and a Master of Commerce. He is currently pursuing a Doctor of Business Administration at the University of Namibia, focusing on business innovation, strategic management, and emerging technologies. With professional experience spanning mining engineering, uranium exploration, strategic research, and nuclear communication, he has served in various roles within Namibia's mining, research, and innovation sectors, including the National Commission of Research on Research, Science and Technology, and Rosatom initiatives in Namibia. He currently serves on the Communication and Publicity Committee of the African Young Generation in Nuclear and actively advocates for Africa's role in the global nuclear fuel cycle. His work focuses on nuclear governance, clean energy transitions, uranium value addition, and positioning Africa as a leader in sustainable nuclear development. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Noble Pete-I.
Thank you. Thank you. Good day, everyone. As introduced, my name is Noble Pete-I Gotolph. I'll be giving the talk today on Namibia, the Namibian nuclear story from the world's largest uranium mine to a national nuclear vision. We can move to the next slide. So the purpose of this is basically I want to look at it as a small briefing on Namibia's emerging nuclear science and technology community, thereby looking at Namibia being the third largest producer of uranium in the world, ensuring that how do we then take that stage of being the third largest producer in the world and capacitate ourselves for us to be able to use our nuclear resources or our uranium resources, and also to see the institutional building that is underway, whether we are looking at the nuclear industry strategy of 2025 and also the draft nuclear bill that is currently in circulation and we also recently attended, and then to ensure that entities such as the Association of Young Generation Nuclear of Namibia, which we call NAMYGN, and the Nice Club Namibia are also youth-led constituencies which actually help to capacitate and advocate for youth involvement in the nuclear sector or uranium sector. And then we are looking at understanding strongly and also ensuring that there is deep engagement and briefing to set out the Namibia stance on the internationally benchmarked areas. Now, why is it important? As I alluded to earlier, Namibia is a top producer of uranium, and it is against this background that we are trying to ensure that we have the legal frameworks in place, institutional foundations in place. Next slide. So if we're looking at Namibia at a glance, we are saying we're the third largest producer. We have basically almost 10% of the global uranium share mining output. And then we say the exploration of uranium started in Namibia back in the day. So if we're looking at the rossing uranium, it started, let's say, in 1976, but we currently don't have any nuclear power plants, or we are at the very, very beginning of the nuclear fuel cycle, where we're basically just at the mining and milling section currently. So it is important that we need to understand that Namibian uranium was first identified as a source that can be used back in the 1928s, and then systematic exploration started in the late 1950s, and it has still been going strong. And as we are seeing currently, there's a lot of exploration flagship programs that are still taking place. There is a lot of let's say there's people mining flagships from international entities are also still doing a lot of exploration in this area. Now, today's mining uranium is basically just in the mining and milling, and we're just exporting basically the raw material. So that means we're basically at the front end of the nuclear fuel cycle with no domestic enrichment or power generation currently. And we want to look at how do we change that? How do we capacitate ourselves? How do we ensure that Namibia actually can move past this stage where from mining, milling, and only exporting? So, if we are looking at the government's policy since 2014, we've been trying to pursue a full nuclear fuel cycle. The ambition is there because there too, last year, in let's say November, December, there was a nuclear industry strategy. And in this year, we took a step further and we recently, I think it was last week, Friday, we attended the nuclear bill that is currently in consultations, where we also contributed to see how do we ensure that our voice is heard in this conversation, in order for us to see there must be a clear path for our resources being exported, and ensuring that we actually capacitate ourselves and ensure that Namibia's uranium resources are actually more beneficial to the Namibians themselves. Next slide. So when we are looking at the nuclear fuel cycle, we need to look at we are looking at talking about the mining and milling. That's where we are currently. Now we're seeing, where do we want to go? We want to look at areas such as conversion and enrichment, where you see you convert the yellow cake and enrich it, and then there's fuel fabrication, so that you ensure that you can actually generate power, and also ensure that you use, because nuclear has a lot of applications, right? So you want to see, like, how do we ensure that we actually use this, being the third largest producer of uranium in the world, how do we then cascade that down to use it in our agricultural sphere, to use it in our let's say isotopic hydrogeology, to use it in our medicines and so forth. So the national vision and the aim is to progressively move Namibia along this value chain, and move it from let's say move it from the raw uranium exports towards value addition, research capacity building, and eventually electricity generation. Because it does not help for us to basically just claim that we are the third largest producer of uranium. However, we are just exporting the raw material. So we need to change that formula, and we're very, very adamant about ensuring that formula is changed. Next slide. So if we are looking at just a couple of mines currently that are the flagships producing mines, so we have the Rossing uranium, we have Husab, and we have Langer Heinrich. So you would notice that in Namibia, there is a region called Erongo region. That is our uranium. It's a premier uranium jurisdiction, and it's where most of our uranium mines are located. We all these mines are basically under international entities, in partnership with international entities. For example, the Rossing and those stuff, we are having Chinese partners, and then the Palatine is the Australian partners, and so forth. So these are just a couple of them. Next slide. So just a couple of just to touch on a couple of exploration developments that are happening currently. We have the Etango 8, which is now the lead developer partner is Bannerman. This is also Australian, and in joint venture with the Chinese partners. So then we have Tumas, it's a DBL also Australian, and then we have Norasa, which is now under Forces Metals, Canadian, and then Copies and Portfolio, which is under Elevate, so it's also uranium, I mean Australian and European partners in that. Next slide. So if we are looking at the journey from Namibia, we are looking at, let's say, when we identified, for example, that was now in the 1928s. If you're looking at the timeline, the 1976, we had the uranium, let's say, commercialization at Rossing. Then we moved into 2007, where there was a moratorium placed on new uranium exploration licenses, and then In 2009, the Namibian Atomic Energy Board was established, and in 2014, the cabinet adopts a full fuel cycle and nuclear science policy to ensure that how do we capacitate Namibia? How do we move Namibia from just being an exporter and a miller to move along the value chain? And then last year, as I said, cabinet approves the first nuclear industry strategy. So they were also doing their consultations there, let's say from October, November, December. So there is a nuclear industry strategy that is still with the lawmakers. And then we recently just concluded the draft consultations with for the nuclear bill. Next slide. So when we're looking at the nuclear strategy, what we need to understand is the policy milestone. So the National Nuclear Industry Strategy speaks to the modernization of regulations, where we amend the Atomic Energy Board and Radiation Protection Act of 2005 and strengthen institutional capacity. And then we are looking at how do we conduct feasibility studies? How do we look at things that can actually work for Namibia in Namibia's current context, whether that is now to assess SMR, MMR, research reactors, industrial irradiation facilities, and so forth. Sorry for that. And then also to explore the fuel cycle, looking at international partners. What have they done? What has worked? What has not worked? In order for us to place Namibia at a better benefit and a better advantageous position, and then also to build through the nuclear bill that is being proposed, build a nuclear institute to establish like an institute that will basically be a hub for research, training, and coordination, and so forth. So the ambition is basically to say we want to train as many Namibians as possible. Therefore, we are also in collaboration with the IAEA and international partners and sending out our young experts to go on retraining and so forth while the industry is being built. Next, please. So if we're looking a bit from a glance on the draft nuclear bill, the bill is envisaged to replace the Atomic Energy and Radiation Protection Act of 2005, which regulators say no longer covers all the nuclear installations or Namibia's expanding nuclear activities or ambitions. So this bill is centered on three major tenets, which is now envisaging a nuclear commission of Namibia, where there will be strategic leadership, policy direction, overall governance of the nuclear sector, envisaged nuclear sector. And then there would be a nuclear institute of Namibia, where that deals with the research, development, promotion of peaceful nuclear technologies. It is very, very important that we stress that we want to undertake a peaceful nuclear program, because we're a signatory to the NPPT and so forth. And then there is also an aspect, the last tenet for the nuclear bill is the Radiation and Nuclear Regulatory Authority, which would be an independent licensing, inspection, and enforcement of safety and security standards. So that is what the envisaged nuclear bill is looking at. So this would basically replace the current two-body system where the Advisory Atomic Energy Board and the National Radiation Protection Authority with a coordinated three-tiered framework, also designed to drive uranium value addition beyond just raw exports and milling. Next slide. So if we are looking, it is very important, as I say, that we work in the international framework, right? And then if we are looking at aligning with the IAEA milestones approach, so with the IAEA, there are 19 milestones that you need to reach and go through as a country. So Namibia's institutional reforms map naturally fall under the three-phase milestones approach for countries considering or embarking on a nuclear power program, a peaceful nuclear power program. So that is now the first phase is considerations before a decision. So there you are talking about national policy formulation, feasibility studies, and preliminary of the 19 nuclear infrastructure issues. So as I said, there are 19 issues that you need to actually cover before you move on with anything to do with nuclear under the IAEA's milestone approach. And then we are looking at preparatory work after a decision has been made. So that is for current, because Namibia is currently focused on phase one, right? In order for us to now move through all those things and cover everything that needs to be covered, and then we look at the preparatory work after the decision. So that is now once we have decided, okay, now we are ready to do this. Now we need to move into phase three, phase two. So this would actually also be enabled by a bill, by the nuclear bill, if this bill is now passed and so forth. So that would detail infrastructure development, legal frameworks, regulatory body, seating and contracting arrangements, and so forth. And then phase three is around activities to implement. So that is now your construction, your commissioning, and operations of the first nuclear facility under full regulatory oversight, of course. So that is now a long term vision. And then if we are looking at infrastructure issues that are already in motion, we are looking at the national position and the legal framework. So that's now being covered by the draft nuclear bill, which is before, which would be moving after the consultation, would be moving before Parliament. And then we have stakeholder involvement. So that is now when we're doing the public consultations and seeing like, what does private sector say? What does the government say? What do the OMA say? What do the public say? So that is now where we're saying the stakeholder involvement and engagement. And then we look at the regulatory body, which is now the Radiation and Nuclear Regulatory Authority. And then something that is very, very important and critical for this to succeed is to ensure how do you actually capacitate sorry, how do you capacitate Namibians to actually be in charge of the envisaged future? So that's now where we're coming in with entities such as UNAM is looking at creating a nuclear school, and then there are a couple of entities, institutions of higher learning, and then we have youth entities that are strong advocates for peaceful nuclear. That is now the the Association of Young Generation Nuclear of Namibia, which is NAMYGN, and then the NICE Club, Nuclear is Clean Energy Club of Namibia, and then university partnerships and so forth, because it does not help that you create an entity or an industry without capacitating the people of the country, right? So we are very, very strong advocates for ensuring that Namibians are in charge of this envisaged sector and so forth. Next slide. Sorry. So if we're looking at nationwide policy consultations, we touched on this. It's now the nuclear bill that was being went through the whole 14 regions. That consultation finished last week, so it went throughout the whole country. So what do the officials say? We are looking at the regulators noted that 2005 law has gaps. So how do you now close those gaps? So those are the aspects that the bill is looking at, and then there was some problems. Obviously, you need to admit that there's some problems that happened. So whether that was now low public turnout or limited awareness around the nuclear aspects, and then some opposition leaders would that are maybe against this sort of let's say industry. Because of security and aspects like that. Because anytime we speak about nuclear, we need to be very, very stringent about ensuring that we deal with aspects of security. Next slide. So then we are looking at possible partnerships. We had the Russian Namibia Business Forum. So there were conversations between the governments of Russia and Namibia. We have our Chinese partners, and there's United States. So one thing that we are trying to see is we want to learn from the global village. We want to learn about from who has done well, who has expertise where, so that we don't start reinventing the wheel, but actually just ensure that Namibia is better positioned. Next slide. So just to touch upon NAMYGN, I'm the founder and executive director of NAMYGN, which is the Association of Young Generation Nuclear of Namibia, and also the Nuclear is Clean Energy of Namibia. So basically, just in a nutshell, we are falling under the Continental Network, which is Africa Young Generation in Nuclear. And then that is now falling under the auspices of the International Youth Nuclear Congress. We are always open for partnerships, ensuring that we attend, like we recently attended the NASA in Kigali, we attended openings in Russia. So it's very, very important that African voices are being heard, and entities such as the NAMYGN and Nice Club Namibia are ensuring that youth voices are actually heard at the international stage. So we are advocating and ensuring that um, we demystify this thing called nuclear and move it away only from this misunderstanding or misconception that it only deals with nuclear power plants or bombs and so forth. Next slide. So here we're basically just talking about the actions of NAMYGN, which is now advocacy, education, curriculum enhancement, and then also public awareness building, ensuring that we are at the decision-making tables wherever. And with NAMYGN, one thing that we're very adamant about is ensuring that we have a very strong governance structure wherein we have experts from various fields and various expertise. So we would send a person, for example, if there's an event that has to deal with finances, we would send a finance expert from our board and so forth. So it is very important that we are represented by somebody that knows what they're talking about at that specific table. Next slide. So Nice Club is basically it's still in its infancy, but it is falling under the flagship that is now the Association of Young Generation, because we want to break down this silo. So we don't want to do fragmented things. We want to speak with one voice. So here we're talking about creating an area where peer-to-peer conversations can happen amongst young people, amongst students, and so forth, by building a durable and a professional entity under NAMYGN, and also to ensure that we are speaking about and creating literacy around nuclear being clean energy, and ensuring that conversations related to energy security are actually being held from people that are concerned with the future of the country. Next slide. So we are looking at closing the gaps. Now we are talking about the human capital development. As I said, UNAM is going to start with a nuclear school. It's envisaged and it's already in the works. Institutions of higher learning are now more concentrated also on ensuring uranium-related and programs are at an advanced stage, and then also to ensure that how do we make sure that Namibians are capacitated and they upskilled in matters related to the envisaged nuclear sector. And then why is it important to build capacity, and how do we do that? So that is now through feasibility studies. We do have experts such as Dr. Vieira on our board, and then we are looking at people like Professor Asa, so Dr. Lorica Africana. So we have different various experts, as I said previously. So we are ensuring that there must be grassroots clubs such as now NAMYGN and Nice Club, to ensure there is expertise that are homegrown and publicly trusted. Next slide. So if we just look at a glance to look at the African continental context, so we are seeing in Egypt they are building the El Daba nuclear power plant, and then South Africa has the Quebec. Ghana is basically having advanced planning stage. Morocco is also planning, and then Nigeria, Uganda, Ethiopia, they are also at early stages of planning, and then we have advanced planning also in Kenya and Rwanda. As we attended the NASA 2026, it was very, very clear that Rwanda is adamant about ensuring that they are having a seat at the place. And I'm also seeing that Burundi is also moving in that direction. And Togo, which will be hosting next year's NISA, is also looking at advanced planning in this area. Next slide. So where are we as a continent? We have Egypt with the operating power plant, and then countries that are actively building nuclear power plant, also one in Africa, for example. And then, I mean, like these are figures that can be updated, and I can also be informed if something has changed so far. And then we want to ensure that, because Africa is currently lacking a lot of electricity, right? So we want to ensure that we can bring out the 600 million Africans out of electricity starvation or energy starvation, and also to catalyze and increase financing for nuclear, because What we also found out in NAISA 2026 is that the World Bank is now at a watershed moment where they're now allowing for financing in nuclear infrastructure and stuff like that, which is something very welcomed development. Next slide. So Namibia, just to reiterate again, Namibia being the third largest producer in the world, we are trying to bring real benefit and make sure that that is actually beneficial for the Namibians by ensuring that mineral beneficiation happens within the country. So we don't yet have a nuclear power plant. Like South Africa, for example, with the Quebec, and then Egypt, that is also now strongly moving in the direction. So the opportunities that lay ahead are converting our raw uranium materials, and then using the envisaged Nuclear Commission Institute and the regulatory authority to build a credible and investable institutional base, and then also to position Namibia as a Southern African cooperation hub alongside South Africa and other SADC partners, and also to leverage a strong safety, stability, and rule of law reputation already cited by international mining and nuclear partners. Next slide. So what opportunities and challenges can we look at? If we're looking at opportunities, we're looking at domestic value addition and beneficiation there with Forex and so forth. SMR suited for Namibia's vast, sparsely populated grid, job creation, obviously, and homegrown technical expertise and development of human capital, regional nuclear cooperation have potential in Southern Africa, and then also the diversification of international partners. So one thing that our government also says, Namibia is a friend to all, enemy to none, and we are trying to move in that direction because we want to ensure we get expertise from all around the world without necessarily having to alienate as experts from a certain country as compared to another country. And then obviously we need to speak about challenges. That is now capital intensity. This nuclear industry is very expensive, and then uneven public awareness. So that's where now clubs such as Nice Club Namibia and NAMYGN are coming in to build strong public awareness and advocacy, nuclear advocacy, and so forth. And then this is still a developing technical and regulatory skill space. So we don't have a lot of experts in that area yet, but we are building that. And then the high water demand for fuel cycle facilities in arid countries such as Namibia, that's another challenge. And then obviously, we need to speak about the uncomfortable part of sovereignty and dependency risk in foreign finance deals. So those are also some of the challenges. Next slide. So what do we want from international partners? Like, let's say, for example, the IAEA, we are requesting sort of integrated nuclear infrastructure reviews through our phase ones. That would be done through the Atomic Energy Board of Namibia and its directorate, and so forth. And then OECD, Nuclear Energy Agency, to invite Namibia's full participation, because we do have actually quite a strong partnerships of international partners in the sense of IAEAs, the OECDs, and so forth. And then we want to also ensure that there is partnerships on a national level among, so that we don't create silos, as I alluded to earlier. And then academic and youth networks such as now the NAMYGN, your nice clubs and so forth, to walk through IEA, let's say exchange programs, IYNC programs and so forth. So Namibia asked its partners on a definite time-bound roadmap, not an open-ended aid. We don't want aid. We want to be able to be partners in our own future. Next slide. So in closing, so we are looking at moving from resources to vision. So Namibia stands at an inflection point, from the world's largest uranium mines to a modern regulatory framework, and a generation of young Namibians through NAMYGN and Nice Club Namibia are determined to ensure that there is strong advocacy and there is strong awareness raised around this thing called nuclear. We want to demystify this thing called nuclear and ensure that all the nuclear applications are understood well. And then when we're looking at continued engagement. So we welcome opportunities for follow-up technical dialogue, coordination of the Atomic Energy Board, as we always do. Anytime we want to do something that is related to awareness and so forth, we always go back to our parent body, which is the Atomic Energy Board, and ensure that, look, we're having this idea. How do we ensure that we are actually partnering in this aspect and so forth? So thank you very much for listening and for engaging. Now, any sort of questions that you have, I can address. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Noble, for that insightful presentation. I'd like to remind the participants, if you have any question, to drop them in the chat, or you may raise a hand to ask the speaker directly. I'd like to start the Q&A by asking you, from your perspective, what are the main opportunities for Namibia to connect its natural resource with long-term nuclear capacity building, education, and institutional development?
Thank you very much, Doctor. So it is important that we understand and appreciate that where Namibia is at, being the third largest producer of uranium, how do we ensure that we build capacity within? So the opportunities that lie for Namibia are, if we do indeed move into this direction, we are looking at capacitating our people, sending our young experts or our young people to go get expertise from the global village, as I always call it. And then also, what would this also bring for Namibia, making it a hub, let's say in Southern Africa, and then also ensuring that our importation or imports of, let's say, electricity related, energy related aspects are reduced drastically. And then also maybe in closing to say that it would help Namibia move away from this thing of just exporting raw materials to actually being utilizing those materials for the benefit of Namibians. I hope I've answered your question, Doctor.
Yes, thank you. Let's move to one of our audience. I think Katlego.
Katlego.
Yeah.
Katlego, you can go ahead.
I think you can unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
we
yes.
hear you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you so much for literally organizing this event. It's what Africa needs at this point and moment. And one question that I have from my fellow friend is, we understand the situation that is going in Africa, but how do we actually let the people know, our constituency in Africa, how do we let those people who are not scientific, how do we actually engage with them? That's my question to Mr. Noble. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katlego, for that. So, as I say, it is very, very important, and it's one thing that I realized when we were doing the consultations on the nuclear bill is that you need to break down the language into a layman's understanding level, because it does not help that you come with these big English words, and then because your message is not being carried over as it's supposed to be. So you need to break down. That's why entities such as NAMYGN and Nice Club are very, very deliberate about ensuring that when we do outreaches, whether we go to the schools, whether we go to community outreaches or consultations, one thing it's important is speak the language of the people. Make a person understand why is it important, why is nuclear important for me as a farmer, for example. How does it benefit me? How does, for example, what applications in nuclear can be utilized, whether that is now for your seeds in the agricultural sphere, or looking at your underground water tables, or looking at fighting let's say pests in the agricultural sphere. So you need to actually create an awareness to make people understand, why does this nuclear thing benefit me, and then also to speak in the language of the people is very, very important. And the point that you raise is very, very stark, and it's very important to understand it. We lose a lot of people, a lot of our constituents to this thing of misunderstanding. That's why we are very adamant about understanding. How do we demystify this thing? I hope I've answered your question.
Definitely, you have answered my question. Thank you so much, Mr. Noble.
Thank you, Katla.
Okay, while we waiting for other question, I'd like to ask you, as a founder and executive director of the NAMYGN, what motivated you to create a youth-led nuclear organization in Namibia?
One thing that I realized is Namibia, as I always go back to say, we cannot be the third largest producer of uranium and not be at the table where the discussions around uranium or nuclear related matters are happening. It's very important that as the third largest producer in Africa, you are the first, and then in the world you are the third. How are you absent at the decision making table? And then we did a bit of research to understand, where are youth voices actually being heard? How do you incorporate and bring in a chapter? So I did a bit of research, and then we found out that there does exist national chapters. It was have a few chapters in Africa, and then there is also an entity called the International Youth Nuclear Congress. And then there are other aspects where like the bookwash and so forth. So we wanted to find out, how do we position Namibia's young people to also be able to sit at the decision-making tables or also be part of the conversations around nuclear science and technology? That's why we created the Association of Young Generation Nuclear of Namibia. And then as recently also now to see, how do we then also ensure, because this would be an entity that deals with various aspects, right? And then to see, how do we also now bring in a youth-centered, a student-centered aspect and a format there. That's now where we're bringing the Nuclear is Clean Energy Club of Namibia and so forth.
Thank you for answering the question. Other question I have, what are some misconceptions about nuclear technology or uranium mining that young leaders need to address through public engagement?
So the misconception for the most part is due to, like, let's say the Hiroshima stuff, the nuclear attacks. So the misconception of nuclear, the moment people hear nuclear, they just think about nuclear power plants or nuclear bombs. So as I'm saying, it is very, very important that we make people understand, why is nuclear important for me as an individual? Why is it important for my country? Why is it important for Africa? And how can that then be used to cascade and make it beneficial for the world? And then to ensure, how does that benefit then, how's that benefit used to ensure that the country actually moves out of abject poverty and that people are actually benefiting from it? So it is important, in my opinion, to demystify this thing called nuclear science and technology, and that you do through awareness raising, advocacy, and then I always say strong drive for creating and demystifying this thing called nuclear.
Thank you, Mr. Noble.
Good, doctor.
I'd like to encourage participants, if you have any question, to drop them in the chat. Other question, what is your vision for Namibia's nuclear sector over the next 10 to 20 years?
So I always say, as a person, I want to make sure that I'm not misunderstood. I do not speak for the government of Namibia. However, as a youth leader, as a person that is very adamant about this, and an engineer by profession, it is important to understand, we need to have strong and robust laws in place that are able to govern this sector, and that is starting through now this nuclear bill now being strategized in such a manner that it does bring a change for Namibia by the Namibians. So that infrastructure needs to be there, and then also there must be strong emphasis on nuclear safety aspects. That needs to happen through the Atomic Energy Board currently and the envisaged Nuclear Commission. So I don't want to go ahead of myself and make it seem as if I'm speaking on behalf of the government. I don't want to do that. But where I want to see, or in my personal capacity, where I want to see Namibia is where we can look at things such as like small modular reactors. That is, in my opinion, something that we can look at, and then also strengthening our let's say our expertise by sending our young people to expert countries where the expertise is already there. So it's building a strong human capital, capacitating and preparing for the sector that is coming, and also ensuring that we have strong laws and regulations in place when the sector does indeed come to fall.
Thank you for the insightful answering. I think we have Cynic Leslie. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, Dr. Nada, for recognition. Greetings to everyone. And thank you, Mr. Noble, for narrating the Namibian story, the greatest lessons that you're instilling there. I just have one question. You've mentioned in your talk the consultations that you've covered almost the entire country doing your consultations. I'm just interested in finding out what is the buy-in like from the community, from the Namibians at large, because I see you do have a buy-in from the international community. You've created partnerships and all of that, but in terms of the local diverse stakeholders, I'm talking about like local companies, the Namibians at large, like what is your perception of the buy-in of the community at large of Namibia into the nuclear programs?
Thank you. So I just want to clarify there to say that the consultations were conducted by the Atomic Energy Board of Namibia, right? And its directorate, therefore. So we basically, as NAMYGN and Nice Club Namibia, basically just went and were part of the consultations to see like what do we see from the envisaged bill. So what I realized from my perception was that there was the bill can do with improvements, and we are busy also giving in our formal communications to the Atomic Energy Board of Namibia, where we see that it might perhaps create silos, and we are very adamant about not creating too many entities that would actually be not beneficial for Namibia. But those are our own perceptions and our own opinions that we will also put in formal writing to the Atomic Energy Board of Namibia. And then also there was something that I picked up was that like locals don't necessarily have that expertise in like if you're going, for example, to a rural place, you don't have that much level of expertise, so maybe there would be some low turnout in that aspect. And then we did also advise on the Atomic Energy Board regarding that those sort of areas, also to create more awareness around the nuclear bill, because it does not help creating a sector that the people do not understand. The people need to understand, because the sector would be to the benefit of the people. If you do not get the buy-in of the people of the country, it does not help to create something, in my opinion. I hope I've answered your question.
You absolutely did. Thank you for that. And let me just say one last thing. I'm much impressed by the Namibian outlook of things, of not wanting the open-ended aid, but instead wanting to partner and sit at the table where the internationals are. I mean, where the whole world is sitting discussing nuclear issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noble.
Thank you.
I don't know if anyone still have a question. I saw Ketio Catelo.
Well, thank you very much. The question that was asked clearly outlined what I was asking for from Mr. Noble, and he has clearly outlined everything. So with that being said, I really thank you.
Okay, thank you again for such a thoughtful questions and insight. That brings us to the end of our Q&A session. Now, I'd like to move to our closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Nada and Noble, for the fantastic contributions and the work that you have developed. And thank you for Noble to acknowledging all the efforts that are being done in Namibia. So now, without further ado, I would like to invite my colleague Lensina to provide the welcoming remarks on behalf of newcomers for Nuclear Global. Please, Lensina, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to know if you hear me very well.
Yes, we hear you very well. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I would like to thank Noble for this informative presentation, and our moderator Nada. Thank you so much for you, and thank you so much for the participants. My word for closing remarks is very short. Dear colleagues, distinguished speaker, moderator, and participant, as we come to the end of today's webinar, I would like to extend our sincere appreciation to everyone who joined us for this important session and on the Namibian nuclear story, from the world's largest uranium mine to a national nuclear vision. First, I would like to warmly thank our speaker, Noble Pete-I Gotolph, Elizabeth, founder and executive director of the Association of Young Generation in Nuclear of Namibia, my colleague, and already founder of Nuclear for Young Generation Nuclear of STEAM and STEAM, Science, Technology, Engineering, Mathematics, and WIN. But I'm a young guy, but I found STEAM a WIN for women in nuclear in my country, women for in my country. Thank you so much for great this. It is very, very important to empower young in nuclear sector. For sharing such valuable insights into Namibia's nuclear journey, your presentation helped us better understand how Namibia's strategic uranium resource can be connected to a broader national vision and nuclear science, technology, education, policy development, public engagement, and long-term capacity building for Africa first, for your country first, for Africa first, and for the world. Today's discussion reminds us that a country nuclear future is not defined only by its natural resources, but also by its people. Institutional knowledge, leadership, and vision. Namibian experience offer an important example for newcomer and emerging nuclear countries, especially in Africa, and whose resource participation can evolve into a more integrated approach to national development and regional cooperation. Nuclear sector is cooperation, cooperation and cooperation. No cooperation, nuclear can advance anywhere. I would like to thank our moderator, Dr. Nada Alu Fishani, for guiding today's conversation, professionalism and clarity, and for helping create a mindful space for dialogue and exchange. To all our participants, thank you for your presence, your question, and your contribution, and your continued interest in nuclear science, uranium resource, public engagement, youth leadership, and African nuclear's future. Your participants strengthen the global community we are building for new common for nuclear. We hope today's session has inspired you to continue learning, collaborating, and supporting young professionals who are working to shape responsible, inclusive, and toward-looking nuclear pathway in their countries. On behalf of newcomer for nuclear, thank you once again for joining us. We're looking forward to welcome you to our upcoming webinar and future activities. Our close future activities is summer school. We invite you to register for summer school, and 3 months later, autumn school. Yeah, it is the flagship event for newcomer for nuclear. Have a wonderful day, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are joining us for. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lansina. Thank you so much, Noble. One last announcement. If you haven't registered for the Summer School 2026, please, you are still within the time. Noble will be one of our lecturers from the faculty staff that we have in the school. The program is free of charge, and it will be 10 days commitment time within 10 to 1:30 p.m. Burkina Faso time. So please, you have all the details on the chat, and you can also scan the QR code. And we welcome all of you STEAM participants around the globe. And thank you for today's discussion. So have a very good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Good day. Thank you.
Good day. Good day.